My wife and I teach a class for distressed couples, and we bill it as if you're struggling, come to this class. We had a woman one time told us a story that when they came to the class, she hadn't told her husband that she'd signed him up for marriage class. She just said, "Oh, we have a meeting at church." And so he didn't know until he walked into the room what it was that he signed up for. Now, I'm kind of amazed that he stayed, but he did. And after our 10-week session, he said, "You know what? That was really valuable. But to be honest with you, I would not have come had I known what it was." And this has become so commonplace that we talk about it on our first day of class. And we talk about how 75% of couples don't agree on the state of their relationship. And it's very frequent that one person really wants change and someone else doesn't, and they don't want to work with it. Or they have so wanted change for so long, they've given up all hope and they're just burnt out and they don't think there's any point in working at it anymore. And so it's funny. Once we kind of get this out in the open and we talk about it as something that's very common, then people raise their hand and go, "That's me, I relate to that." And so we'll get into a small group and we'll talk about it. And it's not uncommon for several couples in a small group, or several people, I should say, just to say, "You know what? That's me. I would not be here. I'm just trying to please her because she begged me to come." And so this is some of a resistance to change, and this, "I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this." And I think that there's a lot of reasons for that. I think sometimes you don't see why it's so bad, because maybe for you it's not, but for your spouse it is. But you don't get it. And I think that was me. Michelle had asked for therapy at one point, and I said, "No, if you want to go ahead, but I'm not going. I don't see the need. I mean, it wasn't bad for me." So sometimes there's that. I think sometimes there's kind of this pride of, "I don't want to admit that I can't do this or that I'm failing in some way." There's oftentimes a real sense of embarrassment or shame. One woman came into our class and she told me later, she goes, "I just felt so ashamed because I saw a pastor that I knew." And she said, "I just wanted to crawl under the table." And we go to this mega church, so it's very easy to be anonymous, and you can come in and not see anybody you know. And then when couples do, they get this kind of sense of, "Uh-oh, I'm caught. I shouldn't be here." And so I know that what we do in our mega church would not play well in a smaller church where you kind of recognize everybody and you know everybody. So we call it distressed couples, and I think in a smaller church you'd have to just say this is marriage education. People usually come in very defensive. Their spouse is blaming or saying, "If you'd only change, this is all your fault." And it's kind of like, "Well, I don't want to go somewhere and get blamed more, so I don't want to go." And so they're very, very defensive. And usually there's a lot of unawareness of what really needs to change or even what the issues are. And so part of the value of marriage education is to raise what that awareness is. And then couples come and they'll hear us talk about something and they'll go, "Yes, that's me. I so relate to that." And they just couldn't put it into words before, but it helps them to be able to articulate it. I met with one pastor once, and he told me he had a 95% success rate working with couples. And I thought, wow, that is really impressive. I said, "What's your secret? What do you do?" He said, "Well, I'll only work with them if they're both committed to spending 20 hours a week on their relationship and then doing exercises and reading books." And I thought, wow, that kind of is a pretty high bar. And I get his time commitment, and that's what he had time to do. So he only took the couples that were most committed. But I think he's leaving a lot of couples behind. See, I think this whole unawareness of change is part of the process. And this resistance to change is just what happens. And so as a mentor, I want to talk to you about it, make you aware that this is what's going to happen, and it's okay. People are where they're at, and that's all you can do. So a few suggestions. One, I mentioned this, call it marriage education. I don't think mentoring works well, or counseling. I think there's a whole population of people that will sign up for a class that won't go to something that they perceive as threatening to their relationship or labeling them as being in trouble. Focus on what the couple is willing to do. So you can ask, if you ask a couple, what would you like to get out of this? What's your goals? What would you like to achieve? They might go, you know what? Here's what we're committed to changing. Now, that gives them a goal. Now, they might not have that. You might go someone and go, my goal is to go home and not come here. And that's okay. You have to take them where they're at. And then raise awareness of the impact of what needs to happen. Now, we're going to go into that more in further posts of how you do that and what you do. But I want you to be aware of these issues or this issue that someone doesn't want to be there, so that when you hear it, it doesn't mean they won't change. I've seen many couples become more aware and suddenly be willing to work at their relationship.